These are the cars that promised greatness, but ended up as America's biggest automotive disasters. From the quirky AMC Gremlin to the controversial Chevrolet Corvair, they were weird, unsafe, and sometimes just plain bad. Stay tuned as we reveal 10 American cars that drivers hated and history never forgot.
Number 10, the Plymouth Fire Arrow was a short-lived but interesting compact sports coupe sold by Chrysler's Plymouth division from 1978 to 1980. It was based on the Mitsubishi Lancer Celeste and imported from Japan, rebadged under Chrysler's strategy to offer smaller, fuel-efficient cars during the late 1970s fuel crisis. The Fire Arrow was part of the Plymouth Arrow lineup, which included both hatchbacks and pickups. The Fire Arrow was the sportiest version in the Arrow family. It featured bold graphics, sporty striping, and a distinctive hood scoop. Available only as a 3-door hatchback, it came with rally-style wheels, front and rear spoilers, and bucket seats, all aimed at attracting younger buyers looking for affordable performance. Under the hood, the Fire Arrow was powered by a 2.6-liter inline-4 engine, the Mitsubishi Astron engine, which was large for a small car of that era. It delivered around 105 horsepower. Not huge, but enough to give the lightweight coupe a fun, zippy driving experience. Transmission options included a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic. While not a full-on muscle car, the Fire Arrow's lightweight build and rear-wheel drive layout gave it agile handling. It was seen as a good alternative to the Toyota Celica or Datsun 200SX, competing in the growing import sports coupe market in America. Despite its sporty looks and reasonable performance, the Fire Arrow struggled for several reasons. It arrived just as American buyers were shifting more heavily toward economy and practicality, not flashy graphics and rear-wheel drive. Build quality was decent, but early rust issues and limited dealer support hurt its reputation. Plymouth as a brand was also losing ground in the late 70s and early 80s, and cars like the Fire Arrow didn't quite fit into their traditional lineup. By 1980, Plymouth discontinued the Fire Arrow as they restructured their small car offerings and moved towards front-wheel drive platforms like the Plymouth Horizon. Some versions of the Fire Arrow came with an optional sport handling package, including upgraded suspension components, making it somewhat popular in grassroots racing circles and autocross events even after production ended. Number 9, the rise and fall of the Oldsmobile diesel. America's diesel disaster. In the late 1970s, the U.S. automotive world was shifting. The 1973 and 1979 oil crises had driven fuel prices through the roof. Japanese and European cars, known for their fuel efficiency, were gaining ground in America. General Motors, GM, desperate to maintain dominance, saw a solution: diesel engines. In Europe, diesel cars were known for their longevity and superior fuel economy, sometimes delivering up to 30 to 40 miles per gallon. General Motors tasked Oldsmobile, then one of its top-selling divisions, with leading this diesel revolution. In 1978, they released the first mass-produced diesel Phi 8 engine in an American passenger car, the 5.7-liter 350 cubic inch Oldsmobile Diesel Phi 8. Soon, GM offered diesel engines across their lineup: Oldsmobiles, Buicks, Cadillacs, Pontiacs, and Chevrolets. But here's where the disaster began. Instead of designing a diesel engine from the ground up, GM adapted their existing gasoline engine block for diesel use. Diesel engines operate at much higher compression ratios, around 22:1 versus gasoline's 8:1, which puts enormous stress on components. Unfortunately, the converted gasoline blocks couldn't handle the pressure. Cylinder head bolts stretched and failed. Head gaskets blew, leading to coolant leaks and engine failure. Crankshafts and bearings designed for gasoline loads wore out prematurely. Unlike Europe, American diesel fuel at the time often contained water and impurities. European diesels had fuel-water separators to handle this. GM's system didn't. Water in the fuel led to fuel pump failures, injector corrosion, engine stalling, and starting problems. In cold weather, the glow plug system and battery capacity were often inadequate. Owners reported cars that refused to start on winter mornings, causing frustration in northern states. Compared to silky gasoline V8s, the Oldsmobile diesels were noisy, rough, and produced noticeable vibrations, which American buyers, used to smooth rides, disliked. At first, sales were strong. In 1979, GM sold nearly 310,000 diesel-powered vehicles. Buyers were attracted by promises of better mileage and long engine life. But soon, failures mounted. Warranties were overwhelmed. Class action lawsuits were filed. GM had to settle with thousands of angry owners. By the early 1980s, diesel sales collapsed. In 1985, GM quietly ended diesel car production. Diesel engines appeared in Oldsmobile 98, Delta 88, and Cutlass Supreme Buick LeSabre, and electric Cadillac Seville, and Fleetwood Chevy Caprice, and Malibu Pontiac Bonneville. This meant the diesel disaster tarnished multiple GM brands, not just Oldsmobile. The failure of the Oldsmobile diesel program had serious consequences. It damaged GM's engineering reputation worldwide. It soured American consumers on diesel cars for decades. Even today, U.S. diesel car sales remain small. It contributed to the overall decline of Oldsmobile, which was finally killed off by GM in 2004. In contrast, Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen diesels from the same era still have strong reputations today. Ironically, enthusiasts have since figured out how to fix the Olds diesel's weaknesses, using upgraded head bolts, installing modern fuel-water separators. Strengthening the block today, surviving Olds diesels are rare collector items. But for most, the name Oldsmobile diesel remains shorthand for rushed engineering, corporate greed, and a cautionary tale of how not to innovate. Number 8, the Lincoln Versailles, 1977 to 1980. Ford's luxury misfire. In the late 1970s, the American luxury car market was changing fast. Cadillac was dominating, and new European imports like BMW and Mercedes-Benz were making waves with their smaller, more refined sedans. In response, Ford's Lincoln division rushed out their own compact luxury sedan, the Lincoln Versailles. Debuting in 1977, the Versailles was meant to compete directly with the Cadillac Seville, which had just become a huge success. But instead of a hit, the Versailles quickly became a symbol of badge engineering gone wrong. The Lincoln Versailles wasn't built from the ground up as a luxury car. Instead, it was heavily based on the Ford Granada and Mercury Monarch, mid-sized family sedans that were far less prestigious. Ford added more chrome. A padded vinyl roof wire wheel covers a unique trunk lid with a fake Continental kit hump, but mechanically it was nearly identical to its cheaper cousins. Under the hood, the Versailles came with a 302 or 351 cubic inch V8. Reliable but not particularly powerful, especially as emissions rules strangled performance. The Versailles faced criticism from day one. Here's why. Buyers and journalists quickly noticed that the Versailles was basically a Granada with a higher price tag. The dashboard, doors, and much of the interior were directly carried over from lower models. By luxury standards, the Versailles was underwhelming. With about 140 to 150 horsepower, it struggled to move its weight with authority, and its ride quality wasn't significantly better than a regular Ford. Priced around $11,500 at launch, much higher than a Granada, the Versailles asked luxury buyers to pay Cadillac money for Ford hardware. Cadillac Seville, although smaller, felt more upscale and bespoke. In its entire run, Lincoln sold only about 50,000 Versailles sedans, far below expectations. In contrast, Cadillac sold over 200,000 Sevilles in the same time frame. Despite its failure, the Versailles did pioneer a few important features. It was the first American production car to offer clear coat paint, a technology that improved paint durability and shine. It came with four-wheel disc brakes standard, which was rare at the time. Versailles models had better sound insulation and some extra luxury touches, like leather seats and optional 8-track stereos. The Versailles is often remembered today as one of the most famous examples of bad badge engineering in Detroit's history. Its failure taught American automakers that simply dressing up a cheaper car wouldn't fool luxury buyers anymore. They wanted real substance, not just style. Because of the Versailles debacle, Lincoln went back to the drawing board and later developed more distinctive models like the Lincoln Town Car and the successful Mark Series coupes. Surviving Lincoln Versailles sedans are rare. They never became collector favorites, but their oddball status in vintage 1970s look have earned them a small cult following among fans of Malaise-era cars, the quirky, flawed, but lovable vehicles of the late 70s. Number 7. The Yugo GB, 1985 to 1992. The car everyone loved to hate. In the mid-1880s, American car buyers were looking for cheap, fuel-efficient transportation. Into this market arrived the Yugo GB, a tiny hatchback imported from Yugoslavia. At first, it seemed like a dream come true, a brand new car for under $4,000. But it didn't take long before the Yugo became infamous, mocked in late-night talk shows and derided by car enthusiasts everywhere. Despite the bad reputation, the Yugo's story is both fascinating and a window into 1980s global car culture. The Yugo wasn't actually a brand new design. It was based on the Fiat 127 platform from the 1970s, a simple front-wheel drive subcompact. Manufactured by Zastava Automobiles in Kragujevac, Yugoslavia, the car was rebranded as the Yugo for export markets. In the US, it was sold as the Yugo GB, which stood for great value. Dealers marketed it as the cheapest new car you could buy in America, a 1.1-liter four-cylinder engine, making around 55 horsepower, 4-speed manual transmission, basic interior with minimal features. No power windows, no air conditioning, unless added later, tiny 13-inch wheels and simple suspension. The Yugo was initially a sales success, but problems piled up fast. Here's why it became infamous. Many Yugos arrived with defects right off the dealer lot, from misaligned doors to electrical gremlins. Paint quality was thin, and interior plastics felt cheap and brittle. Engines suffered from timing belt failures, carburetor troubles, and overheating. The Yugo was especially prone to breakdowns if owners didn't follow strict maintenance. The tiny Yugo performed poorly in crash tests and was seen as unsafe compared to larger American cars. Comedic target late-night comedians in Hollywood quickly made the Yugo a punchline. It was called the worst car in history by some magazines and surveys. Despite its flaws, the Yugo had a few redeeming qualities. Affordable transportation. For under $4,000, you could get a brand new car, much cheaper than any used car alternative at the time. Simple to repair, mechanics found the Yugo easy to work on. Parts were cheap and owners could often fix small issues themselves. Good fuel economy. With over 30 miles per gallon, it was economical during an era when gas prices were rising. By the early 1990s, sales had plummeted. Factors included quality issues damaging the brand's image. The collapse of Yugoslavia and the outbreak of war disrupted production. Tighter U.S. emissions and safety regulations the Yugo couldn't meet. In 1992, Yugo America filed for bankruptcy, and the car was quietly pulled from the market. Today, the Yugo GB is remembered more for its reputation than its reality. Some car enthusiasts collect them as quirky symbols of 1980s car culture. It's an underdog story, the little car that dared to enter the U.S. market but couldn't quite survive. Number 6. Cadillac Simmeron, 1982 to 1988. The car that almost damaged Cadillac's legacy. When people talk about automotive flops, the Cadillac Simmeron is almost always on the list. Launched in 1982, the Simmeron was meant to help Cadillac move into the growing market for smaller, more fuel-efficient luxury cars. But instead, it became a symbol of everything that could go wrong when a brand strays too far from its identity. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the U.S. was still dealing with oil crises and changing car tastes. Compact European luxury cars like BMW and Audi were gaining fans in America, and General Motors decided that Cadillac needed to compete. Enter the Simmeron, a front-wheel drive compact sedan built on GM's J platform, which it shared with much cheaper cars like the Chevrolet Cavalier and Pontiac J2000. Cadillac dressed it up with leather, badges, and wood trim, hoping buyers would see it as a true luxury vehicle. At launch, the Simmeron came with a 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine, making 88 horsepower 4-speed manual transmission, a rare thing for Cadillac. Optional 3-speed automatic leather seats, real wood accents, and premium carpeting alloy wheels, upgraded sound system, and available sunroof. Later years added a V6 engine and more features, but the basic platform remained the same. The Simmeron quickly gained a reputation as a disappointment. Here's why. Badge engineering at its worst underneath the Cadillac badge. The Simmeron was almost identical to cheaper GM cars. Buyers and critics quickly noticed that they were paying thousands more for essentially the same car as a Chevrolet. Weak performance. The four-cylinder engine was underpowered and unrefined, especially compared to German rivals. Even when Cadillac offered a V6 later, it couldn't shake the slow and cheap image. Not true Cadillac luxury. Traditional Cadillac buyers expected big, smooth, powerful cars. The Simmeron's small size, noisy engine and front-wheel drive were a huge shift, and not in a good way. Damaged the Cadillac brand. The Simmeron's failure hurt Cadillac's reputation. Luxury buyers saw the brand as trying to cut corners, and many defected to Mercedes-Benz and BMW. To be fair, the Simmeron wasn't completely without merit. It introduced Cadillac buyers to front-wheel drive and smaller cars, ideas that would later shape the brand's future. By later model years, the V6 versions were better equipped and offered decent features. Collectors today view the Simmeron as a quirky symbol of 1980s excess and corporate mistakes. Sales steadily declined after the initial launch. GM finally killed the Simmeron after the 1988 model year. By then, the damage was done. Many automotive historians say it set Cadillac's reputation back by a decade. The Cadillac Simmeron is now a textbook example in business schools and car circles of how badge engineering can go wrong. It reminds car makers that luxury isn't just about leather seats and fancy badges. It's about delivering real performance, refinement, and prestige. Number 5. Dodge Aspen and Plymouth Volare, 1976 to 1980. The cars that promised gold but delivered trouble. When Chrysler launched the Dodge Aspen and Plymouth Volare in 1976, they were supposed to be the company's saviors, modern replacements for the aging Dodge Dart and Plymouth Valiant. They even won the prestigious Motor Trend Car of the Year award in their debut year. But behind the awards and advertising, things weren't so shiny. Chrysler heavily promoted the Aspen and Volare as stylish, more comfortable, and more advanced than their predecessors. They featured smoother, more modern body lines, improved ride quality with Chrysler's new isolated suspension, more luxurious interiors, especially in Volare Premier and Aspen SE trims, engine options ranging from a basic slant 6 to a more powerful V8. They were positioned as American alternatives to rising imports like the Toyota Corona and Datsun 510 buyers could choose from. 225 cubic inches, 3.7 liters. Slant 6 standard, 318 cubic inches, 5.2 liters. Fate or 360 cubic inches, 5.9 liters. Fate, optional. Sedans, coupes, and station wagons. Optional bucket seats, rally packages, and even performance versions like the Aspen RT and Volare Roadrunner. Sadly, things fell apart quickly. Here's why the Aspen and Volare became infamous. Rust problems. Both models were notorious for severe rusting, sometimes appearing within just a year or two of ownership. This issue was so widespread that it led to multiple recalls and lawsuits. Mechanical gremlins. They suffered from poor quality control, faulty carburetors, failing suspension bushings, electrical problems, frequent stalling and rough idling. Overpromised performance. The base Slant 6 engine was durable but sluggish. Even the V8 versions didn't offer the kind of power that their muscle car styling suggested, especially with tightening emissions rules. Recalls galore. The Aspen and Volare were among the most recalled cars of the late 70s. From rust to suspension failures, it seemed like every part had a problem. Disappointment after winning awards. Winning Car of the Year raised expectations, which only made the quality issues stand out more when customers faced real-world problems. Yes, a few things. The Slant 6 engine, while old school, was known for its durability. The cars were roomy and offered comfortable rides when everything worked. The performance models like the Aspen RT and Volare Roadrunner are now rare collector items and have a nostalgic appeal. Sales declined sharply after the initial excitement wore off. By 1980, Chrysler replaced both models with the Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant, much simpler front-wheel drive cars built on the famous K-car platform. Today, the Aspen and Volare are remembered as classic examples of 1970s Detroit failures. Over-ambitious designs, poor execution, rushed to market without proper testing. For car enthusiasts, they're a fascinating piece of automotive history. Cars that could have helped Chrysler, but instead became cautionary tales. Number 4, Chevrolet Vega, 1971 to 1977. GM's shiny disaster. When the Chevy Vega debuted in 1971, General Motors promised it would be the small car that's big news. It was meant to challenge the rising tide of Japanese and European imports like the Toyota Corolla and Volkswagen Beetle. Sleek, lightweight, and affordable, on paper, the Vega looked like a game-changer for the American compact car market. But in reality, the Vega became infamous for all the wrong reasons. Body styles, two-door sedan, hatchback coupe wagon panel delivery, rare. Engines, 2.3-liter aluminum inline-4, Dura-built 140. Later GT models added 2-barrel carbs for a performance boost transmission. 4-speed manual, 3-speed automatic special models. Vega GT, sporty version. Cosworth Vega, rare high-performance version with British-engineered DOHC engine. At launch, the Vega won praise, even grabbing Motor Trend's 1971 Car of the Year. But soon the nightmare started. Rust problems. Thin sheet metal and poor rust proofing meant Vegas started corroding shockingly fast, sometimes within the first year, especially in cold, salty climates. Engine disaster. The innovative aluminum engine block warped and failed because it didn't have cast iron liners, early models. Overheating was common, leading to cracked heads and blown gaskets. Quality control built at GM's new Lordstown assembly plant, which was famous for labor strikes and rushed production. Cars left the factory with poor paint, loose parts, and misaligned panels. Recalls Vega had multiple recalls, including issues with fuel systems, rear suspensions, and engine reliability. Standard Vegas were sluggish, doing 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 13 to 15 seconds. The Cosworth Vega, 1975 to 76, was GM's attempt to salvage the car's reputation. It had twin-cam power and special black and gold styling, but was expensive and too little, too late. General Motors spent millions marketing the Vega as America's answer to imports, but warranty claims piled up, hurting GM's finances and reputation. By 1977, GM discontinued the Vega, replacing it with the Chevy Monza. Collectors avoid regular Vegas due to their cursed past. The Cosworth Vega is rare and now somewhat collectible, approximately 3,500 made. Vegas symbolized the 1970s Detroit quality decline and why Japanese brands won over U.S. buyers during this era. Number 3, Ford Edsel, 1958 to 1960. The most famous flop in car history. When the Ford Motor Company launched the Edsel in 1958, they believed it would revolutionize the mid-price car market and crush rivals like Pontiac, Dodge, and Oldsmobile. It was backed by Ford's biggest budget ever, $250 million, and hyped as the car of the future. But instead of glory, the Edsel became the symbol of automotive failure, a name still synonymous with disaster. Body styles: 2-door and 4-door sedans, convertible station wagons, hardtop coupes engines, 361 cubic inch Fury 8 Edsel E, 410 cubic inch Fury 8 Edsel E 475. Later models got smaller engines, 292 and 332 cubic inches, transmissions, 3-speed manual, 2-speed automatic, unique teletouch, push-button transmission mounted in the steering wheel hub. The Edsel's fall was rapid and brutal. Here's why. Ugly design. The car's horse-collar vertical grille became an instant joke. Critics said it looked like a toilet seat, or worse, overhyped and misunderstood. Ford hyped it as revolutionary, but buyers saw it as overpriced and confusing, positioned awkwardly between Ford and Mercury lines. Mechanical problems. The fancy teletouch transmission was unreliable and prone to failure. Quality control was awful. Cars arrived at dealerships with missing parts and paint issues. Bad timing launched during the 1957 to 58 recession when people wanted cheaper, smaller cars. Not big gas-guzzling V8s. Dealer backlash. Many Ford dealers refused to invest in separate Edsel showrooms. Confused marketing hurt sales even more. Ford expected to sell 200,000 Edsels the first year. Reality? Only 63,000 sold in 1958. By 1960, the brand was dead, lasting just 3 years. Ford lost an estimated $350 million, around $3 billion today. On paper, the Edsel's V8s were powerful. The E475, 410 cubic inches, made up to 345 horsepower. But performance was overshadowed by mechanical glitches and the car's massive size and weight. The Edsel is remembered as the car that nobody wanted. But among collectors, Edsels have become interesting pieces of automotive history. Well-preserved models can fetch decent prices, especially convertibles and wagons. The word Edsel was the name of Henry Ford's son, Edsel Ford. After the failure, Ford never again used the name for any product. Number 2, Chevrolet Corvair, 1960 to 1969. GM's most controversial classic. When Chevrolet launched the Corvair in 1960, it was meant to be a game changer. A compact car to take on the Volkswagen Beetle and imported European models. It was daring, different, and packed with innovation. But within a few years, the Corvair's name became tied to scandal, lawsuits, and safety debates that shook the American auto industry. Door coupe, four-door sedan, convertible station wagon, briefly. Pickup, Corvair Rampside. Van, Corvair Greenbrier. Rear-mounted, air-cooled flat six, horizontally opposed. Sizes range from 2.3 liters, 140 cubic inches, to 2.7 liters, 164 cubic inches, horsepower from 80 horsepower to 180 horsepower, turbocharged version. Transmission, 3- and 4-speed manual. 2-speed power-glide automatic unique feature. Rear engine layout, air-cooled. Very rare among American cars. Unsafe at any speed, 1965. Ralph Nader's famous book accused the Corvair of dangerous handling. Focus was on the swing axle rear suspension in early models, 1960 to 1964, which could cause sudden loss of control. Handling problems. Rear engine weight in swing axle design made it prone to oversteer. Drivers unfamiliar with this behavior found it difficult to handle at high speeds. Lawsuits and media attacks. Nader's claims led to lawsuits, bad press, and congressional investigations. GM was caught spying on Nader, further damaging Corvair's reputation. Internal GM rivalry. Chevrolet didn't fully support the Corvair because it competed with its own Chevy 2 and later the Camaro. GM shifted focus away after 1965. Early years, 1960 to 1962. Strong sales over 200,000 units per year. After Nader's book, sales plummeted. Final year, 1969. Only 6,000 cars sold. Production stopped in 1969, ending GM's rear-engine experiment. The later Corvair models, especially the Corsa Turbo with 180 horsepower, were actually excellent performers. Handled much better after the 1965 redesign, got a new independent rear suspension. Still, the damage to its image was done. The Corvair is now seen as a misunderstood classic. Early models are collected for their unique engineering. Late models, 1965 to 1969, are praised for sporty looks and much improved handling. Prices are still affordable, but interest is rising. The Corvair was the only mass-produced American car with a rear-mounted air-cooled engine, inspired by European cars like the VW Beetle and Porsche 356. Its cargo space was in the front trunk, frunk. Number 1, AMC Gremlin, 1970 to 1978. America's first subcompact that divided opinions. When the American Motors Corporation, AMC, released the Gremlin in 1970, it was trying to beat the imports at their own game. Small, affordable, and uniquely styled, the Gremlin was America's answer to the rising popularity of cars like the VW Beetle and Toyota Corolla. But while it sold well at first, the Gremlin became one of the most mocked and misunderstood cars in U.S. history. Body style: two-door hatchback with a sharply chopped rear, almost like a truncated AMC Hornet inline-six engines, ranging from 3.3 liters to 4.2 liters, 258 cubic inches, V8 option later, 5.0 liters, 304 cubic inches, horsepower from 100 horsepower, early i6, up to 150 plus horsepower, V8 models. Transmission: 3-speed and 4-speed manual, 3-speed automatic. Platform based on the bigger AMC Hornet platform, but shortened. Controversial design. The Gremlin's most famous, or infamous, feature is its design. It looked like someone chopped off the rear of a regular car. It was called America's first subcompact, but critics joked it looked unfinished. Quality problems: early models were criticized for cheap interiors, weak brakes, and shoddy assembly. Rust was also a big issue, especially in the northern U.S. fuel crisis hero. Despite its quirks, the Gremlin sold well during the 1973 oil crisis because it was smaller and more fuel-efficient than typical American cars. MPG was better than big V8 cars, but still lagged behind Japanese rivals. Mixed performance. The 6-cylinder and V8 Gremlins actually offered decent straight-line speed, but handling was clumsy and safety ratings were low. First year, 1970. Over 77,000 units sold. Strong for a brand new design. Best year, 1974. Over 171,000 Gremlins sold. By the late 70s, sales declined as competition from Honda and Toyota grew tougher. Replaced by the AMC Spirit in 1979. The V8 Gremlin, rare, could surprise.